So we are just letting everyone filter in.
Hey,
There's
Brooke,
quite a few of you.
Right? Will there be a recording of this or?
Yes, we are recording. Yep. So we've got about a third of the people so far. Okay. I hope everyone is thirsty for Prosecco and has their wines in front of them. And just wait a few more moments. I was saying, I think I need a Prosecco book behind me because I don't think I have enough. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Brooke Sobel and I am the wine director of Gary's Wine and Marketplace. Thank you all for joining us today. And it is National Prosecco Week. So welcome. I'm sure most of you are going to be here on the East Coast, but if you're joining us in other time zones, good afternoon or good evening, or if you're enjoying, if you're overseas, good morning maybe. But in any case, it's a great time to raise a glass of Prosecco. In my opinion, you can drink at any time of day and with any meal. I have enjoyed it with breakfast, with lunch, with dinner, with friends, on its own. So I am often with a glass of bubbles in my hand. Just wanted to run through how tonight is going to work. We have 3 panelists joining me this evening. So we have Julia from Mianetto.
Hi, everyone.
We have Francesco from Zardetto.
Hello.
And we have Tatum from Lamarca.
Hi. Ciao.
So, please feel free to use the chat button as we go along tonight, and we will answer any questions that you might have about Prosecco, about pairings, about technical details if you want. But I will be running through not only a little bit about the history, about the grape varieties, about production, but also what glassware to use, what temperature to serve it in. Oh no, somebody's coming over in 10 minutes. I forgot to chill down the Prosecco. How to handle that, along with some cocktail suggestions, and my colleagues will be chiming in as well. So with that, I'm going to show you show you my screen, and we will get started. Let's see. Perfect. Can we all see my screen? Yes?
Good to go.
Okay, perfect. So where is Prosecco made? So Prosecco is made in the northeast region of Italy. It actually crosses over both Friuli as well as Veneto. And we'll get into a little bit more details about that later on. So the first mention of Prosecco actually dates back to the 1st century, with the first mention of Prosecco being produced in the area in the late 1300s. Mention of the production of Prosecco dates back as early as 1754. And then in 1970 is when we had the foundation of the IGT. The IGT is an important organization. First, basically think of it as what was once known as table wine, but Prosecco has been made as long as this, the foundation, the DOC. But it wasn't really until 2009 when Prosecco and all the different things that happened with Prosecco came into being. So this is when you had the area of Prosecco was more defined, the amplography, viticulture and vinification practices, characteristics, labeling, and presentation. So, and here are the 9 different communes, again, covering both Friuli and Veneto region. Aren't these gorgeous? These are the Dolomite Mountains. This is what helps make Prosecco Prosecco. So the Dolomite Mountains, not only does it provide a fantastic backdrop, but these obviously provide great mineral-driven soils. They're comprised mostly of limestone and sedimentary soils. 18 of the peaks here in the Dolomites rise more than over 10,000 feet in elevation. Then, I mean, you have Venice. Beautiful city of Venice with the Dolomites in the background. Grape varieties. Grape varieties. We are talking about Galera here. And Galera as a grape variety has to be a minimum of 85%. There are other grape varieties that can be blended in, such as Verdicchio, Chardonnay, and also Pinot. How do you make Prosecco? Well, you harvest and destem the various grape varieties, whether you're using Galera or you're using Galera and a mix of others. You press, and then you have your primary fermentation. Your primary fermentation, this is when all the great yeast and sugar starts activating. And your secondary fermentation happens in a tank in what is known as an autoclave. And this happens roughly around 30 days. So this is known as Charmat method. So this is different than that of champagne, for example. Champagne, where you have the secondary fermentation in the bottle. This happens in a tank, in a temperature-controlled tank. And from there, we bottle and label. So what is so important about DOC and what sets Prosecco DOC apart is that label. And that label, you have the government seal on top. And that government seal has all sorts of information on it. Not only, there's a huge thunderstorm happening outside. I don't know if you all heard that thunder, so my apologies. So you have the government seal, and you also have on the back label that it's a product of Italy along with DOC. Why is it so successful? First of all, it's delicious, it's easy, it's affordable, it's so food friendly. Like I said, it can go with a wide range of different cuisines. For me, I like to have it either with brunch, so thinking on the side of more savory, like egg dishes and things like that, Thai foods, ethnic foods, but a whole variety of foods that it goes well with, as well as you can enjoy it not only on its own, but with cocktails or in cocktails.
Brooke,
Yes.
we have a question in the chat. Someone is asking if we should start drinking already. I think it's definitely time for a quick cheer with everyone.
Yes. In just one quick moment, just let me get through the presentation. It's just going to be very brief, and then we'll get on to that, because I know you all are anxious. So area is vast, lots of grape growers, lots of grape producers, and 348 that are specifically focusing on sparkling. USA is actually number 2 in exports under the UK. Sustainability, there's organic and various methods that the Prosecco DOC is taking in order to ensure that we are providing clean, great wines. So let's talk about the different sweetness levels. So we have brut, extra dry, dry, and demi-sec. So the ones that we are going to focus on today are brut and extra dry. You would think extra dry means the drier version, but brut is actually a drier style. And most of what we are talking about, in fact, everything that we're talking about today is spumante. So you have higher pressure and we have different sweetness levels. So brut, 0 to 12 grams per liter of sugar, and the extra dry, 12 to 17. So I think now we are ready to start drinking. Anyone? Okay. Yes. Okay. So first things first, we are actually going to start with Mianetto, and we are going to start with Julia. So let's start with your wine. So the shape of the glass that is preferred is actually a tulip style. So this one, thanks to the consortium, is what I received, but I don't know about you all, but I host many dinner parties at my house. And with the many dinner parties come my friends that can't necessarily hang on to a glass. And so this is a glass that I got from Riedel, and it's that great tulip shape as well. So, but tulip shaped glasses are preferred. So, Julia, let's get into the Mianetto.
Yes. So cheers, everyone. I hope you're pouring yourself a nice glass. So Mianetto, I'll give you a little bit of background on the history, and then I'll dive into a little bit more of the wine. So Mianetto was founded back in 1887 by Francesco Mianetto, and they've been in the wine business, and as soon as they then started doing the Proseccos in the 70s in the sparkling method, and they were one of the pioneers with the Charmat method. So transitioning from a traditional method and a second fermentation in bottle to offer the second fermentation in tanks, which is the style of Prosecco that is how it's made today. Mianetto was then introduced to the US in 1997 and was one of the first Proseccos that made it to the US soil. And we're here now, almost 30 years later, still enjoying a glass of Mianetto Prosecco. This Prosecco here that we're tasting is in brut style, and as Brooke was saying, brut means that is has a lower sugar content. In this specific wine, we have about 11 to 12% grams per liter, sorry, and that makes it a very dry and very enjoyable wine. So by smelling it, you can smell those nice, fresh flavors. I smell some white peach, some apple, and then I think it's time to taste some. The bubbles are very nice and refined. They just go around your mouth. It's super refreshing. It's and again, a little bit of peach notes, golden apple, and just a tiny little bit of hint of honey that makes it just perfect.
Great. And what are some things that you like to pair this with?
Well, I'm originally from Italy, so we love Prosecco during aperitivo, which is the equivalent of happy hour. So I love to have it with some, I like a nice cheese board, breadsticks, some charcuterie, and just keeping it all Italian.
Great. There was a question that was posed on commenting of export from UK and US. It's actually exporting the wines, the Prosecco wines, to the UK in the United States. And so UK is actually #1 with US coming in very quickly. Thank you very much, Julia. I'm sure we'll be getting to you later on with a few questions. So, my friend Francesco,
Buonasera.
let's talk Zardetto.
Okay, good. We have one of the oldest wineries as well from the Prosecco, from the heart of the Prosecco area, which is in Conegliano, Valdobbiadene. This family-run business started in the 1930s and was the first imported Prosecco line in the United States in 1984. The winery has always specialized in sparkling wines. It was actually the claim to fame is that the Zardetto winery experimented in finding the most well-suited yeast for the fermentation, for the spumatizzazione, for making the wine into a sparkling wine. As you know, Prosecco was not what it is today. Was first of all was all frizzante. Started frizzante. Started as a lower alcohol quaffing wine drank in the Veneto region. In fact, in the Venice area, Prosecco was drank in this very small sparkling wine glasses called ombre, called shadows. And believe it or not, was drank mostly in the morning, late morning, but not that late, after 10 o'clock.
Like espresso.
Yes, everything goes. Drank with these fabulous little Italian tapas, which could be a fried leaf of sage or one of those small crabs from the Venice area, or an anchovy marinated, small little things that made it even more appetizing. The characteristic of Prosecco, and especially of Zardetto Prosecco, is that it starts fruity, starts with a hint of sweetness, but it has great sapidity and minerality at the end, and a slight bitter almond finish, which makes it particularly appetizing and makes you want to reach for another glass. So you need to keep a lot of Prosecco in your refrigerator, and hopefully some of the Zardetto as well, because you never know who's going to come to your place, and it's good for every time of the day. I particularly enjoy with Brooke showed the beautiful picture of the Dolomites. So the fabulous thing about Prosecco area is that there is a current of cold air coming from the Alps and a current of mitigating warmer breezes from the Adriatic Sea, and they all meet in this corridor, which is the same corridor that produces the prosciutto San Daniele, for instance. And Prosecco is a great foil for prosciutto as well. But I mean, I would be a little more adventurous. You can definitely go into the sushi area, into shellfish, clams. You can go, obviously, seafood in general works very well, especially if you don't have sauces that are too imposing. You want to keep it, you want to keep the delicate nature of Prosecco shining, in whatever you're pairing it with. it's a great companion for cocktails in a lot of, from Spritz is probably the most popular right now, but you can go really crazy. You can have anything from Negroni Sbagliato to, the classic mimosas or whatever. It's very popular in the US, but I've seen some endeavors from mixologists in the US that are really taking it to the next
to a next level, from the Vesper to a twist on the old fashioned. So Francesco, and I'll propose this to Julia too, and Tatum a little bit later. So I'm coming over and I want a Prosecco cocktail. What are you making for me? And I'll start with you, Julia.
I would say I'll make you an Aperol Spritz.
Okay.
The orange.
How do you make a true Aperol Spritz?
So a true Aperol Spritz, you start with you start with a white wine glass, so a bigger, wider glass, or even a balloon one. I don't have one here, unfortunately. And you fill it with ice. Put as much ice as you want so that it stays very chilled. Then you start by pouring in some Prosecco. On top of the Prosecco, you pour equal parts of Aperol, and you pour the Aperol second, because that way the orange of the Aperol and the flavors of the Aperol don't sit at the bottom of the glass, but they're going to be mixing super well and creating that amazing orange color. And then just adding a tiny splash of soda, very little, because we like it when it's a little bit more boozy. And then just garnish it with a slice of orange, which gives it the little nice touch. And it's just perfect to enjoy. And it's super refreshing, super yummy, and it goes with anything. It's very similar to Prosecco. You can drink it at any time.
Yes. Well, thank you. I know I tend to like things a little bit more on the bitter side. And so I like to throw in Aperol and Campari. So I don't know, it depends on your crowd and things like that, but that's another point. But thank you, Julia. Francesco, what are you making me?
Oh, just a couple of words. Our Prosecco has all the, obviously the aromas typical of the glera, including acacia flowers, green apple, apricots, and a little bit of citrus, and on the nose, and then fabulous palette of with the confirming the fruity flavor, but also with the very nice perlage and nice creamy froth that is obviously very food friendly, as well as the acidity present. So I like as well to play with things that are more on the bitter side and not on the sweeter side, as when it comes to cocktails. So citrus elements work well with me, and if it's the spritz type of cocktail, I tend to veer towards the bitter, various bitters. Of course, Campari is most famous, but and include some citrus elements, which I bring out the appetizing nature of the Prosecco. So
great.
I'll experiment with several.
So Francesco, I'll throw this question to you. So I have a question here from one of our customers, one of our guests. Aperol. So what is Aperol?
Well, so in Italy, there's Aperol is very popular, of course, but we are a nation that's very small, but everybody thinks they do things better than their neighbor, and every recipe is very secret. So aside from joke, I mean, there's cordials, or however you want to define them, that go back for many years, centuries, and they are proprietary recipes that include usually 30, 40 different herbal essences. So I do not have the recipe for Aperol, and I don't think anybody has except
anyone will get the secret recipe.
but I would love to.
Tatum, do you have the secret recipe for Aperol?
I do not. All I know is it is a mixture of distilled botanicals, and it is bitter, but in the best way possible.
Perfect. So while we're on with you, Tatum, why don't you run us through Lamarca?
Okay. So hello, everybody. Again, I am with Lamarca. Lamarca, the brand itself started around 40 years ago. And it's not an actual family, but it is a group of 5,000 cooperative growers in the Veneto area. So they have 17,000 acres, which is around 6,800 hectares in Treviso, which is the capital of Veneto. So all hillside fruit, hillside vineyards. I love this. I find Lamarca to be so palatable across so many people. I feel like if people like sweet, they like this, but if people like dry, they like this. And that's one of my favorite things about Lamarca. So recently I've been watching a lot of virtual tastings on champagnes and sparklings, just like a lot of us have at home. And everybody keeps saying to use a wider glass. And I can't do it. I have it in here. You actually do get more of a nose on the wider glass, but I'm a traditional flute girl. But for the purposes, I poured one in each, so I'll just have to drink them both. But on the nose, you get a lot of honeysuckle on this. And again, a lot of peach, green apple, and very similar on the palate as well. I get a ton of apple when I first taste this, some floral notes with white flowers. But again, it's just so easy to drink. And just like Francesco said, you have to keep a lot on hand because Prosecco is very easy to drink. Also, I should point out, I don't sound as cool as Julia or Francesco. I'm just a regular old Jersey girl here. So
Nothing wrong with that.
I do not have the fun accent. But this has 1.7 grams of residual sugar per liter. And people always hear the word sugar or they hear the word sweet and they kind of tense up. I feel like it's a trigger word in the wine world. But something
very much so.
to find is that Coca-Cola has 110 grams per liter. So when this is 1.7, it is a very low amount of sugar that you're actually consuming. But my favorite pairings for this, I love brunch. So I love this with an Eggs Benedict because kind of the acidity of this cuts through that hollandaise sauce. But if I'm just drinking it, I'm with Julia I love doing cheese and some prosciutto. And I think being in New Jersey, we're very lucky that we have great Italian specialty stores here. Because I've been to Italy enough that I'm now a snob with all of it. So, and anybody that shops at Gary's knows you have great prosciutto there.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, we do, as well as great cheese selection. And so you can order online. You can come into the store. Yes, we are open. We are, our staff is taking the precautions and we're asking our customers to take the precautions, or you can download our app, make it easy. We can come to you. So, so thank you, Tatum. By the way, what cocktail? I'm in a mood for a Prosecco cocktail. What are you gonna make me?
So I love Montenegro Amaro. So I do that on the rocks. I do a little splash of tequila in it, grapefruit juice, fresh grapefruit juice, and then top that off with Prosecco, and that is delicious.
Great. Might have to try that. I mean, I do have a few open bottles of Prosecco.
Yeah, you have to figure something out.
I know. I've got some, you know, I'm like, I've got neighbors that I like to keep happy. So, so they'll be reaping in some rewards. So, some other cocktails. I mean, let's talk about Bellinis, right? Harry's Bar, Venice, made famous. So Bellinis are basically peach puree and Prosecco, versus mimosas are typically orange juice and Prosecco. But all these Proseccos that we have tonight, you can enjoy very much on their own, or if you would like to enjoy with some cocktails, you can certainly do that as well. Some other great ideas that have come up is doing a Prosecco bar for various parties and doing different types of juices and allowing your guests, obviously, once this passes, and we can all sit back and enjoy Prosecco together in a group setting. But doing different types of juices and things like that, that's something else you can do. Questions from Susan Tatum. How many growers did you say contribute to Lamarca? Over 5,000?
5,000 cooperative growers. So what's really interesting about Italy and a lot of France as well is people will own rows of grapes or very small plots, and they're all part of a cooperative growing group that actually sells their grapes, but it is one group that is kind of tending to all of the needs of the vineyards.
Great. And Darren's asking about a Pompolini. Anyone have one? All right, that is one I have not had. Darren, perhaps you might be able to show it.
The grapefruit based cocktail, I think.
I had forgotten that, so thank you, Darren. The sugar content in Prosecco, basically the grams per liter does vary depending upon the different producers, and whether or not it's dry, extra dry, sec or demi-sec. So, and I'll get to the last wine that we don't have a panelist here for, and this is the Zonin. So Zonin, this producer has been since 1821. This is 100% Glera, and the sweetness level here is just over 12. I get lots of underripe peaches, but specifically that beautiful white peach, and slightly spicy on the nose. You notice some people, and I don't know if you all are doing this, but just take a sip. But there's a thing that we like to call in the industry as like the mousse or the mouthfeel. And you don't really get that until you do swish it around a little bit. And when you do, you get this great feel of the foam in the mouth. And that does vary depending upon the different wines. So, friend Julia, so when you like swish around and talk about like the foam, how would you describe Mianettos?
I would say, so I poured this a while ago and I still have some bubbles coming up. And the bubbles are always like in Prosecco, they keep coming. They're very persistent and stay in the glass for a while. But they're also very small bubbles. You want to look for small bubbles because when you get those big bubbles, it's almost like you're having a soda, and it's not the same type of pleasant surprise in your mouth. And these bubbles are.
I always, sorry to interject, but I always say the bigger the bubbles, the bigger the headache.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the small bubbles just go around in your mouth and kind of like clean your palate up. So it's almost like it's a cleanser for your palate when you're eating. And I've noticed that, for example, I love sometimes having the Prosecco with French fries, which is something that you would not always think it's something that goes with it, but the greasiness of the French fries and the acidity of the Prosecco and the fine bubbles just go so well together that they balance each other out. So I think that very fine, almost like a massage inside of your mouth and on your tongue.
That's great. And you're joining us from Italy, correct?
I wish. No.
That was a question that was asked in the panel. Is like, where is everybody tonight?
I'm actually in our offices in New York. I'm hoping to go back to Italy very soon because all my family is there, and I haven't seen them besides seeing them on a screen in a long time. So
well,
I'm really looking forward.
Hopefully, you'll be back to joining them real soon. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Francesco. You're joining us from.
I'm joining from. Well, I'm in New Jersey right now. Fortunately, cannot go to Italy for now, but I am a U.S. resident, and I actually would travel quite a bit if it wasn't for the latest problems. But just wanted to bring up one point that we think Prosecco is and Zardetto in particular is you mentioned before the swishing, and something that entails using all the senses. And we have created the latest package that we have. It really aims to hit all the senses, and obviously the touching the label, but we have a double label with a proprietary artwork. We have phrases in Italian translated into English. Obviously, the most important thing is what's inside the bottle, but we know that Prosecco is something that is appreciated very much in America, and people want to hear a story, and there's a beautiful story inside of the bottle and on the label. So thank
Right.
you. Show you some marketing tools.
Tatum, is there vintage Prosecco out there?
I believe there is. I don't think I've ever personally had a vintage Prosecco. They exist, and I'm sure Francesco and Julie would probably know better than I do specifics, but I don't think I have ever actually had a vintage Prosecco.
Julia, Francesco?
Yeah, not so much in the DOC. There are vintage bottlings in more specific area, even subzones of the DOCG, like the Cartiz and the highest end expression of the grape, I guess. But not.
Yeah, and in the Prosecco area, they're called millesimato. And it's from just one vintage, and usually also just from one specific hill, or how they call it in Italy, riva. A riva is a specific hill and vineyard area.
Right.
What's nice about not being restrained by vintage is you can keep a lot of consistency in the bottle, and you can really pick where the grapes were best in specific years. So it creates a lot of consistency in the product, so you know what you're getting, versus a vintage, which could be really warm or really cold or really rainy. So it actually is very beneficial to not have to have a vintage date sometimes.
Yeah. So there's a fun pairing question that's been proposed: is what Prosecco pairs best with sliders from White Castle? Christina, are you enjoying some White Castle right now? If so, are you sharing?
You know what? I actually think like those little tiny onions on those White Castle burgers would probably be great because they're kind of sweet, and I think they would go great with any of the Proseccos. Those kind of sweet notes goes with those really sweet little onions on there.
Mm-hmm. So true. I know Tuesday I did a tasting for a media on Prosecco and had some wines open, and I had tacos. And I like some heat with my tacos. And so it paired perfectly. Also pairs perfectly with pizza. And so many different things. Like I said, breakfast, lunch, dinner. One thing that I get asked a lot, you know, when I was a sommelier and now working back in retail, is you have guests coming over. You've been preparing a great meal, or, you know, dealing with kids or whatnot, and you forget to chill down the Prosecco. What do you do? Well, one easy trick is taking a paper towel, getting it wet, wrapping it around the bottle, and then putting the bottle in the freezer for 10 to 12 minutes. Boom, you got cold Prosecco. Quick, easy. So it's one tip. And sweet covers heat. So remember, the little bit of sweetness that you get with Prosecco, it covers the spiciness of any type of dish, which is why it goes great with sushi. It goes great with ethnic foods like Thai, Ethiopian, Peruvian, whatever, Mexican. Just so many different great spicy dishes. But it also can go with something as simple as shrimp because of the sweetness. With some real great fresh shrimp or great shellfish. So Gareth says Prosecco slushies. Have any of you made some Prosecco slushies?
I've done the ice pops and then put them, like, use them almost as the ice in drink. So I don't know if that counts as a slushy, but I've definitely made the little ice cubes or popsicles out of them.
Yes, I know that I've had a Prosecco slushy in my freezer when I've forgotten about the Prosecco that I put in with the paper towels. So make sure that you set a timer for yourself, because otherwise you'll hear a boom and then wonder what that was. Prosecco. Francesco, Julia, do you have any slushy cocktail recipes or anything fun to beat the heat during these? Thank goodness it's not in the 90s today. It's only in the 80s, but to help us beat the heat.
So last week, we were actually experimenting a little bit with Prosecco here in the office, with being social distance and having a mask on, but we made Prosecco Ice Cube with some fresh fruit. So I think we added raspberries and blueberries, and we just put them in the freezer for a couple of hours. The Prosecco almost froze. It had a little bit of like a slushy, in between a slushy and an ice cube type of texture, and then just put it in the glass with more Prosecco in it. And it was just perfect to keep the Prosecco super chilled. And that was also a tip if you don't have enough space in your fridge to freeze or to keep your bottles cold, you freeze some of the Proseccos as ice cubes and use those to make your Prosecco cool down.
Great. Francesco, anything to add to that?
I have present a gelato machine, and pretty much the principle is 4-to-1 water, whatever you use, and sugar is the lowest thing. So I will, now that you open my mind to more creative things, I will definitely try to use it for an experiment.
Great. Tatum, how do you distinguish, like in a blind tasting, right? Some of our customers are maybe doing some fun experiments, socially distancing, of course, with friends. And how do you differentiate in a blind tasting? champagne to Prosecco?
I think Prosecco is much brighter and lighter and more floral, whereas a champagne, Prosecco's in the tank method. So the champagne is in the bottle. So you're getting a lot more contact with those lees, the yeast cells. You're getting a lot more contact in a bottle than you are in a tank. So, whereas in the tank, you're kind of retaining all of those really light, bright flavors. In a champagne, you're going to get a lot more bready, yeasty, almond kind of characteristics. And I also find champagne and just other sparklings, traditional method sparkling, to be a little bit higher in acidity as well, where you'll feel it in the back of your mouth, where I feel like the Prosecco kind of coats everything. And there's definitely a nice balance acidity there, but I feel like champagne and traditional method sparkling you can tell the acidity much easier.
Yeah, you definitely get, at least for me, you get more citrus, and then the level of different toastiness. So is it, butter toast? Is it brioche? Is it, you get more of those characteristics and sometimes a little bit more earthiness from champagne than you would with Prosecco. You tend to get more stone fruits and a little bit more upfront fruit. So I always get sweetness on the tip of my tongue, acidity on the sides. You get any type of tannin coming from the wood, if there's wood on the back of your throat, and then any type of tannin coming from the grape skins would be like feel like little sweaters on your teeth. So Prosecco is a lot of here and then here for me. Just making it like you just want to eat. You just want to eat and drink. So
tell people a fun way to tell acidity. My friends love this. It's kind of gross, but when you take a sip of something, if you tip your head forward and your mouth really salivates, that's higher acidity. So the more your mouth it's gross, but the more kind of saliva drips down when your head's tilted, that's how you can tell higher acidity. So it's a fun but gross trick to do when you're trying wines.
I always do it as, after I take a sip and then I put my tongue on the roof of my mouth. And if I get a pool underneath my tongue, then I know like, oh yeah, I want to eat something. That's the acid level. So many people, they they know that there's a drying sensation. And so making sure that it's the sides of the tongue versus the backness of the throat, which is also drying. So you have acid and tannin level. Those are two drying sensations when it comes to tasting wines. But all great questions here in the chat. Keep them coming. Anyone from my panelists, like any last points? We're down to the last 10 minutes here.
Well, I would recommend everyone to enjoy their Proseccos as fast as possible. I mean, in my fridge, they don't really last that long, but also good advice is don't store it in your wine cellar. If you have one, you're lucky. But don't keep it there. Don't wait for that special occasion, that like 10-year anniversary. Prosecco is fresh. It's refreshing, and drink it. You buy it, drink it within a couple of months of you buying it. Don't sit on it the same way as you would with some like nice Bordeaux or some great California wines.
Mm-hmm.
I second that, and also I think it's you don't want to keep a wine in the fridge for a long time because it tends to dry the cork. So it's better to ice it. I don't want to say at the last moment, but even the day before or a couple hours before you put in the freezer is better than keeping for a long time in the fridge and having something happen to the cork.
Tatum?
So it's actually funny that Julie was saying to drink it younger. I actually, earlier we were talking about smaller sizes, and I grabbed my wedding favor out of the refrigerator. So it's 6 years old that it's still hanging out in my fridge. So I do not plan on opening this because it would probably not taste very good. But one thing I've been thinking while I've been sitting here is normally I drink Lamarca when I'm with my friends and it's, you know, normally a brunch situation, or something like that. And I'm talking and I'm drinking and I'm not always thinking about it. And just kind of sipping this on its own, I'm realizing what a long, really nice finish this has. And just something I have not thought about in a really long time. So it's been nice to just sit and slowly sip a little bit of the Lamarca and really appreciate it.
Great. So Donna brought up a great question. So once it's opened, how long can you keep Prosecco? And if any of my panelists have any tips and tricks on different stoppers, perhaps, that they've used. Or like, I've got a few of them.
So my recommendation is to drink it within a couple of days, no longer, because the nice thing about Prosecco is the bubbles. You don't want to lose the bubbles, and the longer you keep it in your fridge, the more it's gonna, first it's not gonna taste good anymore, and then it's gonna go flat and lose the sparkling, the bubbles, the fun of it. There's a bunch of different stoppers, because the crazy thing about Prosecco, like with still wines, you take the cork out and you can put the same cork back into the bottle. With Prosecco, once you pop the bottle, you have that mushroom cork that expands at the bottom, and you're like, how do I put this one back in here and keep it closed?
Yeah. There's no trick to that, by the way. There's no trick.
No.
As a former sommelier, there's no trick. You can't get the mushroom cork back in there.
I even tried cutting the cork and keeping it in. It just pops back out because of the pressure of the bubbles. I don't have. Oh, actually, I do. Here. I recommend having a stopper that has like this kind of like hook that goes under the bottle, under the rim of the bottle. I poured myself a small bottle because I'm here alone, and I didn't want to then leave the open bottle for the whole weekend. But this one hooks under the rim of the bottle, and it keeps it nice and tight. And with this one, I think you're good for almost 48 hours. Yeah,
that is a really good stopper. I have a few of them. Could always use more. Francisco, what do you?
Yeah, I have the same, different color, but same idea, and
same style.
Yeah, you want to keep it. There was an old trick people used to think that if you put a fork or a spoon in an open bottle of sparkling wine, it lasts, and it does last a little bit. Of course, not as long as if you have the properly closed bottle, but you want to
a spoon.
Yeah,
is
like
that an old tale, a trick?
Yeah, but you need to put it in. I mean, it needs to be the size that fits in the bottle when the bottle is open. Like, yeah.
And
but after the next day, drink it.
Yeah, Tatum.
I feel like I'm a bubble snob. I want as many bubbles as possible, so I'm about a 24-hour girl on sparkling.
Yeah, I mean, in my household, bubbles don't last long because my grandmother always said, you have to celebrate life. You have to celebrate that you woke up in the morning. You have to celebrate that you have a roof over your head, and you've got food in the fridge, and you've got family that loves you, friends that love you. So enjoy it, celebrate it. And Tatum, do you have a preferred stopper?
The same as Julia, actually. I use the exact same thing.
Great. Well, these are also another stopper. We just so happen to have these at Gary's Wine and Marketplace. But these are simply put the stopper down on the bottle, and you just twist. And then this just helps to seal this. You also might find just a simple closure like this, in which it snaps down, which for some it's easy, but because of the second lip, sometimes it doesn't always work. So, so Julia's, and for my panelists, their preferred closure is actually one of mine, but this is also another great one. So this has been fun. It's been like an hour has gone by. I mean, are we gonna do this again sometime? Because I think we should. If there are no other questions, thank you to my panelists for being so great. So Julia, Francesco, Tatum, and for all of you to be joining. And cheers to you.
Salute.
Cheers.
National Prosecco Week. So cheers.
Chin chin.
And don't forget to visit us on garyswine.com or download our app. And thank you all for joining, and safe travels wherever you are. And yeah, salute. Cheers.
Grazie.